Hello everyone, my name's Esther and this is Jon, having a wonderful time digging today. Welcome back to our series on air, fire, water and of course earth that we're looking at today.
We are, and what we're doing here, we're digging in some compost into the soil so it's ready for crops. Because in order for crops to grow healthily, you've got to add extra nutrients into the soil. And just like when we eat, if we want healthy bodies, we've got to eat well. And when it comes to our spiritual lives, if we're Christians, we feel that we need extra spiritual elements in our lives, like reading the Bible, like praying, and spending time.
Yeah, that's it, spending time with other Christians, going to church,
Absolutely. So it's really important to get the right levels of nutrients into our soil. And we're going to be learning more about that later, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. But before we get into all that, we are going to have a song and then we're going to hear from the wonderful Anna Martin from Shropshire Wildlife Trust, who gave us a bit of a tour around one of the most rare landscapes in the world. So have a great time with us today and we'll see you later.
See you in a bit.
Bye.
I am the river flowing, I am the desert dry, I am the four winds blowing, I am the sunset sky, I am the forest breathing, I am the ocean wide, I am the storm clouds gathering, I am the mountain high. We are the children growing, you are the place we live. We are the seed you're sowing, we are the life you give. We are the future rising, we will be your voice. We will watch and learn from you, we will make the choice. I am the river flowing, children. I am the desert dry, the place we live. I am the four winds blowing, we are the seed you're sowing. I am the sunset sky, we are the life you give. I am the forest breathing, we will be your voice. I am the storm clouds gathering, we will make the choice.
Hi, my name's Anna Martin and I work for Shropshire Wildlife Trust. and my job is the Marches Mosses Events Officer, and I'm about to take you out onto this landscape, which is one of the rarest habitats on Earth. So this special place is the Marches Mosses, and it's a peatland, and as I said, it's one of the rarest habitats on Earth. Peatlands now only cover 3% of the Earth's surface. Well, it's hard to know where to start because there are so many things about this place. One key thing is something that's beneath my feet right now. It's very squishy, and it's the peat that forms this habitat. You can see it can hold a lot of water. It actually holds 10 times its weight in water. So here in Shropshire, on the border with North Wales, the peatlands are known as mosses, and they get that name from the sphagnum mosses that are a key plant in peat formation. And sphagnum moss has a lot of really cool qualities too, so it holds even more water. It actually holds 20 times its weight in water. And the other thing it's able to do is, as it moves into areas, it modifies the environment. So it likes places that are fed with rainwater that are slightly acidic already, but it increases the acidity of that area. So in the UK, over 80% of peatlands have been destroyed or damaged. So we're really lucky to have this huge area of peatland, and it's actually the third largest raised bog in the UK, and it covers 2,500 acres. Well, a key benefit for the whole planet and all the species on it is that this place holds a lot of carbon, and all peatlands hold a lot of carbon. And so in this time when we're thinking about a climate crisis, they're really helping in the fight against climate crisis. Peatlands now cover 3% of the Earth's surface, but they in fact hold more carbon than all of the world's forests. Peatlands are kind of like the UK's rainforests. They're this rare, unique habitat that is home to species that really can't live anywhere else. And there's a few different species that really make their home here. One is we have a particular type of dragonfly that can only live in peatlands, and that is the white-faced darter. And there's only a handful of sites in the UK that now have white-faced darters on, and we're lucky enough that we have them here. Another species that's really important and is on the endangered species list is curlews, and we have a number of breeding pairs here, and there are times when you can really hear that call across the mosses when you come and visit, and it's amazing that we've got them here as well. One quite weird species, we have a lot of weird species at the moss, and is the raft spiders, and they're a type of spider that lives on the edges of ponds and can walk on the water. So some reasons why this place is important for people is, one reason is that this place holds a lot of water. And so they can kind of act as sponges. So they can prevent flooding locally if they're looked after. Another thing is that it's a really great place to connect to nature. We don't have that many vast wild spaces anymore. And I think that's really important for us as humans to really have this place that really helps our well-being if we spend time in it. Mosses are actually really surprising places. They actually are incredibly old. So this landscape started to form 12,000 years ago. What happened was, as the glaciers came through the landscape and shaped it, they left behind pools or meres. And in some places, like here, plants moved in, including eventually sphagnum moss, and that started to form peat in that area. And peat gets formed really slowly. That sphagnum moss that we looked at earlier gets laid down at 1 millimetre a year. So it's really, really slow. So in 10 years you just get 1 centimetre forming. And it take us back a really long way to start off with, because it's believed that peatlands were really, really important in the Iron Ages. In fact, anthropologists and archaeologists believe that they were sacred sites, that they were places that people came to meet their gods. And this landscape would have been quite different from the surrounding landscape, so we think that they maybe saw them as a kind of different place. There are gases, methane gas that escapes from this site, and we know that sometimes that ignites, so they might have had flickering lights kind of across the landscape. So we think people might have seen them as this different landscape, and that might have been one reason why they were seen differently in that time. And the reason that they think that this site was so special and important and a place to meet the gods is to do with the offerings that were made here. So in the Iron Ages, people were just starting to form groups and starting to try and farm and grow crops, and so it would have been a really quite hard life, especially in the winter, trying to have enough food. And so it's believed that people came to peatlands to meet their gods and that they would make offerings. And the reason, the sort of evidence behind that is that there's lots of things found in peat bogs, more than you'd expect for just people dropping things. So here at the mosses we found a Bronze Age axe head that is in the mosses, but there's collections of objects across Europe. So something else that's found here are bog bodies, and that is seen as something that was the ultimate kind of sacrifice and offering. And we're not sure whether people who were put into the mosses were actually seen as really important within tribes, and that was actually a really important job. We do know that some of them appeared to be really well looked after, that they were well fed. Others we think were probably captured from other tribes and were rather unwilling to be put into the bog. In the 20th century, this site became seen in quite a different way. Peat has always been used. Since the Iron Age, people have cut peat to use to burn for fuel, and in the Victorian era it was used for fuel. And later, sort of into the 20th century, people realised that it was really good for growing plants in, and so it started to be extracted and taken away to be used in people's gardens. And at first that didn't maybe make too much difference when people were cutting it by hand. But when it came to the extraction for garden compost, eventually people started using machines and cutting quite big drains through the moss. And it's really at that point, from the 1920s onwards, that these huge peat domes that had risen up to this 10 feet height then collapsed, and this landscape was really changed. Gradually over time though, people started to see this site in another way again, and people started to realise how important it is for nature. And really around the 1960s this site started to have more protection around it, and in 1990 it was designated as a National Nature Reserve. So a key thing is buying peat-free compost. As I've said, this site is protected and no peat is cut here anymore, but there are sites across Europe where peat is still cut, and it's damaging environments like this when that happens. And if you think about how slowly it forms, just think how many hundreds of years is contained in each bag of compost. So that's a really important thing people can do. I think the other thing that people can do is share something that you've learned. These places, sometimes people don't know very much about them, and really, as many people speaking out for these places as we can will really help to protect them. So we sort of talked about how this site was sacred in the Iron Ages, and then how it became really important to the cultures around here commercially. And I like to think of this place really as starting to be thought of as sacred again, with the ways that it offers us this place to connect to nature and to be in this big wild space.
So Anna talked about the mosses being sacred places to people over the years, where people felt connected to God. We're now going to have a moment where we think about the places in our lives where we feel connected to God. So for example, I used to go to the Isle of Man a lot as a child, and we used to get the boat over, and you couldn't see the Isle of Man for miles and miles until suddenly it rose up out of the mist. And that was really special to me, and I felt really connected and really close to God in that moment. So have a think about where you feel closest to God.
Wow, wasn't Anna absolutely amazing? I will never look at moss the same way again. What about you, John? Do you think so?
Absolutely, I've learned so much just hearing about the mosses and the peat bogs, and yeah, it's what amazing stuff.
It was incredible, especially about the bog bodies.
I know.
That was a bit gruesome, but it was good, wasn't it?
It was.
Well, that's us for today.
So I'm going to get back to my digging anyway, digging in this compost.
Yeah.
But we'll see you guys soon, and God bless.
Bye.